Getting priorities straight tonight. 1 John chapter 5, verse 4 says, "Whatever is born of God overcomes the world, and this is the victory that has overcome the world, our faith." 1 John chapter 5, verse 4. The word victory there, the Greek word that is translated victory is, get this, Nike. Maybe you've heard that before. Yeah. It means victory or success. I've not always been a big Nike fan, but I think that's a pretty cool slogan. I think that's a pretty cool name for your brand. Success or victory. Every 4 years, an event takes place that captures the attention of the whole world. Even if you don't like sports, most of us at least turn in and watch the International Olympics. There's at least something there that draws most of us to watch. Some sport, some event, whatever it is. We all like the Olympics. People watch their favorite athlete or their favorite team compete for the gold medal. We all look with pride as our team stands up to receive their honors on that podium. I'm especially moved when our flag is raised during the playing of the national anthem. I don't know how many times I've seen it, but it's one of those moments that gives me cold chills and oftentimes a tear in my eye. We like to see our team win. But few of us understand the price that these athletes pay to get there and the years of rigorous training and discipline it takes. Same goes for each of us in the Christian arena. Without the right training and discipline, victory will always be out of reach. Because the goal determines our course of action. If your goal is to win that particular event, then it determines what your course of action is between now and the time that you compete. In determining our course of action, we must get our priorities straight in our spiritual life. If your goal is eternity in heaven with God, then that should determine your course of action between now and then. We look at 1 Corinthians chapter 9, starting in verse 24. Paul is talking about the need for self-discipline. 1 Corinthians 9, starting in verse 24. "Do you not know that in a race all runners run, but only one gets the prize? Run in such a way as to get the prize. Everyone who competes in the games goes into strict training. They do it to get a crown that will not last, but we do it to get a crown that will last forever. Therefore, I do not run like someone running aimlessly. I do not fight like a boxer beating the air. No, I strike a blow to my body and make it a slave, so that after I have preached to others, I myself will not be disqualified for the prize." Paul writes this passage with the backdrop of the Isthmian Games, which is the equivalent of the Olympics that we watch today. The event was held every 2 years, 10 miles outside the city of Corinth. And these games brought people from every part of the Mediterranean to compete or to simply just watch, to be a spectator. But it brought people from all over. Excuse me. It was the sporting event of the year, and it drew the empire's best talent to be a part of these games, just like our Olympics. Athletes would compete in foot races and broad jumping, discus throwing, wrestling, boxing, gymnastics, and equestrian contests. They would compete fiercely, each striving for the Isthmian crown, which was a wreath of wild celery. Now, why in the world you would want a wreath made out of celery, I have no idea. But I think it has more to do with the honor than the plant, than the celery. Unless you just like celery, I guess you can chew on it for a while. Winners received, this is what I really think they were after. Winners received a lifetime exemption from paying taxes. That's what it was about. It wasn't the celery. And serving in the military. They would also receive free tuition at one of their universities, just for winning these competitions. They'd get statues of themselves erected along the road that led to the site of the games. But for some reason, I was joking, but for some reason the real prize was that celery wreath, that honor. That was the thing that they could, I guess, hang up at home and be able to see that I won that event. And it was awarded to the winner at the end of the games. But see, to win any prize, a course of action must be decided upon and taken. Number one, we have to proceed. We just have to get going. We have to get started. I think it's an old Chinese proverb that says a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. I heard somebody say it. Just got to get started. 1 Corinthians 9:24. Do you not know that all those who run in a race run, but the one receives the prize? Run in such a way that you may obtain it. All the runners run. In order to run the race, though, we have to get started. We have to get off the starting block. And so the great Nike slogan fits here. Just do it. Just get in the race. There's no way to win a race if you're not running. And to win the race requires that you get in the race. We cannot serve God from the starting blocks. It's impossible to be victorious without doing. We cannot expect God to say, well done, if we will not first well do. And so if your goal is to hear those words, well done, then we need to make that decision and start taking action on well doing. Second thing we need to do is pursue, or to keep moving forward. Run in such a way as to get the prize. Don't just run to run aimlessly. But run in such a way that you have a chance at winning that prize. You run just as hard as the guy in first place. You run your race in such a way as to win. The race isn't over until we cross the finish line. If we want to win the prize, we must pursue excellence in everything that we do. And Paul is telling us that we cannot settle to watch from the sidelines, but we must be involved. We must be doing. We must be moving forward. One of our favorite movies at our house is an animated movie called Meet the Robinsons. It's about an inventor. And as a little boy, he comes up with all these inventions, and they fail, and they mess up, and they blow up, and they do all these things. And he gets really frustrated, and he almost quits. And then he gets the opportunity to travel into the future by time machine, and he meets himself as an adult. And himself as an adult has created an empire because of his inventing. And he learns the phrase from his adult self, keep moving forward. And he shows him a room in his house. He has a large mansion, and he has a room in his house that has every failure, every failed invention in that room. And he can go in and see them. But it wasn't to remember the failure, it was to remember the process, the journey of getting to where he got to and able to perfect that particular invention. And his slogan was always, keep moving forward. They even had a celebration at one point. He failed on an invention. He failed to fix it. And it blew up and it made a big mess. And the whole family has a big party and they say, yay, you failed. And he's like, what? And they said, keep moving forward. Just keep moving forward. And success will come to you. Don't get stuck in the past. Run in such a way that you're going to win. And keep moving forward. We must be willing to take action. We must be willing to change our attitude and keep moving forward. Even when things don't go the way we want them to go, keep moving forward. We must be willing to keep moving even when we feel like giving up. That's what that whole phrase was about. When he failed time and time and time again, the only thing he could do was keep moving forward until he figured it out. And the value of the prize was not monetary but symbolic. The prize for Paul was a sense of satisfaction that God was using him in his ministry, that he had used all his energies and talents and gifts for God's glory, for the good of the kingdom. And that's what Paul lived for. He described that prize in Philippians chapter 3, verse 14. It says, I press on to the goal for the prize of the upward call of God in Christ Jesus. That was his goal. That was his prize. That was what he was continually moving forward to. That's what he got off the starting blocks for. And that's how he ran his race. When we run the race, whatever it may be, let us put our faith, put on our faith, or our Nike gear, if you will, and strive for the prize. We run to receive a crown of righteousness. It's not a crown of riches, but a crown that will carry a message to all who see it, to all those who are around us. We've got to keep moving forward. You got to prepare. You got to get ready. We talked about that a little bit this morning. You got to be prepared to meet the King. You got to be prepared to run a race. Nobody here in this auditorium in their right mind would sign up to run a marathon without ever having practice. I don't think anybody in here in their right mind would sign up to run a marathon without a lot of marathon training. If I signed up for a marathon right now, I might as well be signing my death wish, because I wouldn't make it, because I wouldn't be prepared. I haven't run like I'm running a marathon. I haven't practiced like I'm running a marathon. Verse 25, it says, and everyone who competes for the prize goes into strict training. An athlete who wants to win goes into strict training, not part-time training, not training when it's convenient. They go into strict training, well thought out, well planned, strict training. The key word is self-control. This gives the idea of inner strength, strength not to indulge or act on impulse. The word compete that he uses in the Greek word is the Greek word for agony. It points to the tremendous effort that was put forth to win. It wasn't fun, it was agony going into strict training. Training their bodies to endure and to sustain. It's agony. Although the presence of our self-control is from the Holy Spirit, tells us that in Galatians chapter 5, one of the fruits of the Spirit, the practice of our self-control is our responsibility. Through these, he has given us very great and precious promises, so that through them you may participate in the divine nature, having escaped the corruption in the world caused by evil desires. This is 2 Peter chapter 1. For this very reason, make every effort to add to your faith goodness, and to goodness knowledge, and to knowledge self-control, and to self-control perseverance, and to perseverance godliness, and to godliness mutual affection, and to mutual affection love. The point here is not necessarily abstinence, but having a strong control of our appetites and our passions. If we want to win, we must prepare. And life is full of unexpected events. We must be ready at a moment's notice. If you want to excel as an athlete, you must go into training and train your body to be an athlete. Same is true of Christianity. We need spiritual workouts. Spirituality doesn't just happen by accident. We need spiritual workouts. Time in prayer, time in the Word, time in worship. And to win the race requires that we're ready. We must be in a state of constant readiness to the best of our abilities. We must be ready when God calls us to serve. We must be ready when we cross the finish line. A man said this, the secret to success in life is for a man to be ready for his time when it comes, to be prepared. I believe that's the Boy Scout motto. Be prepared. For what? For anything. For life when it comes. We don't know what's going to happen, when it's going to happen, or how it's going to happen, but we can certainly do the best we can to be prepared for it when it comes. The key is self-discipline. The athletes that competed in this competition had to provide proof that they had been in training for at least 10 months before the contest. They had to have that documented before they could even enter. They had to prove that they had spent the last 30 days doing exercises in the gymnasium where they competed. And in the Greek games, only one received the prize. But for the Christian, the prize is available to all who run the disciplined race. The Christian should run as the winner runs. Because we're promised that if we run that race that way, we win. Philippians chapter 3:13. Brethren, I do not count myself to have apprehended, but one thing I do, forgetting those things which are behind and reaching forward to those things which are ahead. Self-discipline. Hebrews chapter 12, verse 1. Therefore, we also, since we're surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which so easily ensnares us, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us. We have to be self-disciplined enough to throw off the baggage and to not live in the past and to keep moving forward. We have to be self-disciplined enough to set our eyes on the prize and keep our eyes on the prize no matter what's to our left or to our right or behind us. But disciplined enough to keep our eyes straight ahead, straight forward on that prize and run that race like we're going to win. Revelations chapter 3, verse 11. I am coming soon. Hold on to what you have so that no one will take your crown. Keep your eyes forward on that prize and run like you're going to win that prize so nobody can take your crown. In 1976, the University of Indiana won the NCAA national title. When interviewed about their success, Coach Bobby Knight, and I cannot believe I'm quoting Bobby Knight in a sermon, but Coach Bobby Knight said, the will to succeed is important, but what is more important is the will to prepare. The will to do what is necessary to win. The will to, followed by a throwing of a chair. Wow. The will to do whatever is necessary to be prepared to run that race. We must prepare ourselves for the race. The fourth thing we need to do is to get focused. In verse 25, 1 Corinthians 9. Now they do it to obtain a perishable crown, but we for an imperishable crown. Get focused on that crown. Get focused on that prize. We do it to receive a crown that will last forever. If we want to run the race, you must know where you're going. Our finish line is heaven. It's our goal, and we must be heavenly minded even here on earth. To win the race requires us to be focused on the goal. The prize we seek is not an earthly prize. We need to not think in an earthly way, but a heavenly way. Things of this earth will pass away. Our focus should be on that which will remain, the imperishable crown. The winner who received the crown in those games did so after much endurance. We too, in our Christian walk, in our Christian faith, must endure. We must get focused. Since athletes did so much training for a perishable crown, how much more should we strive for an imperishable crown, a crown in eternity? If they were willing to train that much for that long for a physical crown or a medal or trophy, then how much more harder should we be working in our spiritual life for a crown in eternity, an imperishable crown, a crown that will last forever? Puts in perspective for me how much harder I need to be working. In 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 10 says, for we must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ, so that each of us may receive what is due us for the things done while in the body, whether good or bad. I want to be able to stand in that place before the judgment seat of Christ and feel like I have run my race to the very best of my ability as hard as I can. That I have worked and prepared the best that I can. I know I'm not going to be perfect, but I want to know that I worked and prepared as hard as I can. 1 Corinthians chapter 3, starting in verse 13. Their work will be shown for what it is, because the day will bring it to light. It will be revealed with fire, and the fire will test the quality of each person's work. If what has been built survives, the builder will receive a reward. If it is burned up, the builder will suffer loss, but yet will be saved, even though only as one escaping through the flames. What we do will be shown for what it is. And I want it to be shown that I gave my very best. And I worked hard. That I made the sacrifices. That I served. The fifth thing we need to do is get energized. Get passionate about this race. Get passionate about that prize. Get passionate about running. 1 Corinthians 9:26. Therefore I do not run like somebody running aimlessly. I do not fight like a boxer beating the air. This verse makes the point that we should not practice for an event without a goal. Because if we practice for an event without a goal, we don't know how long to practice. We don't know how hard to practice. We don't even know for sure what to practice if we don't know what we're practicing for. Paul said that he did not run without having a reason. Many people today run for fitness, which is a goal. I didn't do track because it seemed like just running around in a circle to me. I like baseball because I could run 90 feet to the next base. It was a goal. I like football because I could run however far it took me to get to the end zone. It was a goal. But I understand, even those that run track and are passionate about track, they have a goal. Whether it's the best time or whether it's being first place across the finish line, it's a goal. Point is, we've got to have a goal to be able to run the race effectively. We've got to have a goal to be able to know what to prepare for and how to prepare and how hard to prepare and how long to prepare. You ever notice that a lot of professional athletes give up running or biking or whatever sport they're doing when there's no more prizes to win? They've won it all. What else is there? Why run if you can't obtain a prize? It's not worth it anymore. But we have an eternal prize to continue running and continue practicing and continue preparing. Paul asks, why in the world would somebody fight if they're just going to swing at the air? That's just going to make you tired. It'll make you sore. And what have you accomplished? What's the point of shadow boxing if you're never going to fight? Whatever sport we choose to participate in or whatever resolution we choose to make, we must not just go through the motions. We need to set a goal before us. Any race that we run, we should aim for the finish line. Do not enter an event, do not enter a resolution without having the goal of finishing. Another thing to point out is that too many times we focus more on the task than on the outcome. When we focus on the task, and the task gets too hard and too cumbersome and too long and too frustrating. When we focus on the outcome, it doesn't matter what task it takes to get there. There's a true story of a man who approached a laborer who was laying bricks. And he asked him, he said, what are you doing? He said, well, can't you see I'm laying bricks? Then the man walked over to another bricklayer and he asked, what are you doing? And the workman answered with pride. He said, can't you see I'm building a cathedral? He had a goal. His task wasn't laying bricks. His task was building something beautiful. Both were physically doing the same thing. But the first laborer was occupied with the present task, and the other was concerned with the ultimate goal. If we forget the outcome of our task, we'll become bogged down on what we're doing. If we want to win in life, we must strive toward purpose. A life without purpose is like a race without a finish line. You just run and run and run and run and run and run and run until you get tired and pass out or throw up. That's not too much fun. Understanding the need for purpose is easy. Defining purpose is difficult. To win a race requires knowing our purpose. Paul tells the Corinthian church that they are to run this race with divine aims and purposes. We are to move through life with purpose and direction. And it's easy to say that standing up here. But sometimes it's difficult to figure out our direction, to figure out our purpose, to figure out our goals and what we're doing. But Paul says you've got to do that to be successful. When we know our purpose in life, it creates energy for us. When we don't know our purpose, we just get tired. There's a Peace Corps commercial that says, if you're not doing something with your life, it doesn't matter how long it is. A little bit sobering to think about, isn't it? Paul knew where the finish line was. He isn't shadow boxing. His opponent is real and he fights, not as one who beats the air. He stops using the phrase we at this point and now uses first person, says I. James chapter 1 verse 12 says, blessed is the one who perseveres under trial, because having stood the test, that person will receive the crown of life that the Lord has promised to those who love Him. To the one who hangs in there, the one who perseveres, the one who has a focus and a purpose, he's the one who will win the crown. He's the one who will win the prize. The sixth thing we need to do is persist and never quit. In verse 27, Paul says, "No, I strike a blow to my body and make it my slave, so that after I preach to others, I myself will not be disqualified for the prize." That, folks, is discipline. Without discipline, one is sure to fail. An athlete's strength comes from discipline, from training his body to do what he wants it to do, training his body to hang in there and not quit, training his body to endure the pain and the agony so that he can win the prize. It's not self-discipline to necessarily to abstain from everything, but self-discipline to make his body and his mind go where he wants it to go and do what he wants it to do. He's not referring here to physically beating himself in any way. I believe he's referring to subjecting himself to strict disciplines of denying selfish and sinful desires of the flesh. He wanted to make sure his body was not in charge, but his soul and spirit connected to God were leading his life in everything that he did, and I think Paul did that. And he was disciplined enough to practice what he preached. And in the Christian life and the Christian arena, we need to be prepared to do that. And be disciplined enough to practice what we preach, practice what we teach, and to keep running the race as to win the prize. I'm going to share a story with you in conclusion, and you may have heard this, but I think it's worth repeating. Mexico City was especially challenging for runners due to its 7,350-foot altitude. Tanzanian marathoner John Stephen Akwari was already cramping when a collision less than halfway through the race sent him crashing to the ground. Despite dislocating his knee and injuring his shoulder, Akwari would not be defeated. He limped nearly 14 and a half miles to complete the race well after the sun had set, and dead last of the 57 competitors who completed the race. There were 75 at the starting line. He arrived in the stadium where the finish line was an hour after the last competitors did. There were a few fans left in the stadium who began to cheer him on. No doubt they were inspired by his persistence to finish the race. The response of the crowd was so overwhelming it was almost frightening. They encouraged Akwari through the last few meters of his race with a thundering ovation that far exceeded the one given the man who hours earlier had come in first. When Akwari crossed the finish line, he collapsed into the arms of the medical personnel, who immediately whisked him off to the hospital. And later, when asked why, after sustaining the kinds of injuries you did, would you ever get up and proceed to the finish line when there was no way you could possibly even place in the race? And John Stephen Akwari said this: "My country did not send me over 5,000 miles to start a race. They sent me over 5,000 miles to finish one." Run your race to finish. Run your race to win. We weren't sent here and put here to start a race. We were put here to win a race. And God says, if you run with me by your side, you'll win the race. If you run with me in your sights, you'll win the race. If you run the race with your eyes on me with persistence and don't quit, you'll win the race. But he says, you got to run. You got to run your race and run it like you're the winner every step of the way. Maybe you're stumbling in your race tonight. I don't know. Maybe you need to get back on your feet in your race tonight. It's a good time to get started. Maybe you haven't really gotten started on your race the way you want to. It's a good night to get off starting blocks. And maybe starting your race means putting on Jesus in baptism. It's a good night to do that. Whatever your need is tonight, why don't you share it with us while we stand, while we sing.
I am